Welcome back to Take Charge. I'm Jennifer Zabasaja.
And I'm Tim Stenovec in New York. Well, the at-home smart fitness boom flourished during the pandemic, while boutique studios shuttered. So what happens when the pandemic passes? Quick Take Chief Correspondent Jason Kelly explores Peloton's rise and more in his latest episode of Business of Sport, out tomorrow. Here's a sneak peek.
We saw the sales spike, almost right away. Not just that people were finding out about Peloton and interested in the bike or the tread, but that they had no choice.
Peloton went from a Kickstarter project to a company worth more than $30 billion in just a few years. But as the world starts to slowly return to normal, what happens next for at-home fitness?
There's an interesting survey that we saw that 59% of Americans said they're not going back to the gym after COVID. If you don't think that represents a big opportunity for Peloton to continue selling bikes and treads, you're crazy.
What's up, Peloton?
Yes, welcome to my house.
I am coming to you live from my parents' home.
When those classes live from home came out, it was a super special moment for internally the folks at Peloton. We really wanted to be there for them with not just content, because you could have taken a class from last year, but something authentic took place when we did live from home, because it's, hey, I'm here.
Peloton stock, which opened in 2019 to a tepid response, grew into one of the best performing stocks in the world, even amid a massive bull market.
And let's be honest, the Peloton, it's expensive. Yes, you can finance it, but this is a bike that costs on average about $2,500 just to get it. Then you've got a monthly fee on top of that.
Every other person you talk to will say, what happens to Peloton after COVID? People think that it's dark clouds on the horizon for Peloton. That pessimism and disbelief in us fuels our fire, and there's still so many naysayers that we're excited to prove wrong.
Well, Jason Kelly is here with us now. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. Look, you literally wrote the book on connected fitness, right? Sweat Equity, it came out a few years ago. You use a Peloton, as you talk about in this. And looking back over the last year, I mean, it kind of seems inevitable that Peloton would have this moment, but many dismiss this company from its earliest days as something that wouldn't actually catch on. Take us through what you've learned.
Well, absolutely, Tim. I mean, I was one of those people when I wrote that book back in 2016. Peloton was really just coming on the scene in many ways. I knew about it. I knew that people were liking it to some extent, but it wasn't catching on really with investors. And I, like many others, thought, you know what, that's not where fitness is going. We're in an era where people want to be with other people in these cool boutique studios, and that was really my focus. That was true for a time, but even before the pandemic, Peloton caught on to something. It figured out how to marry technology and community, and obviously, as we just heard, the pandemic, it just went gangbusters.
And Jason, I mean, John seems so confident that, Peloton is going to continue its popularity with consumers. I mean, where does that come from?
I think it comes from the depth and the devotion of the community so far. I mean, these are people who feel very connected, pun intended, to this brand. There are, Facebook groups that have built up around this, massive social media presence. They've also expanded pretty dramatically away from the bike, into the treadmill, into, all sorts of other modalities. As they say, the app is very, very popular, given that you can do Pilates and yoga and boot camp type workouts. So they see, as you heard John say, just a huge amount of upside going forward.
It seems like, Jason, a real big part of ingredient in the secret sauce is these celebrity instructors, these instructors that they have. Take us into who they are, how they're able to make the transition during the pandemic to go from studio in home, and how they're compensated, because they're making some serious money.
They are making some serious money, and that's because they are, as you say, they're celebrities in many ways. And I do think, one of the brilliant things that Peloton was able to do, and John talks about this in depth in the piece, is they set these folks up at home. And by the instructors themselves had to set themselves up at home. I mean, you guys all remember, we couldn't leave our houses. We certainly couldn't have anyone into our house. And so you had these technicians who were, on FaceTime being like, all right, put the camera here, put the camera there. And there they were doing classes from home. And the reason that they are so beloved in many ways is there's a real intimacy that they create, and that only was heightened, I think, during the pandemic.
And Jason, I'll say, because I have used a Peloton before, and I love these instructors so much. And really, like you mentioned, I mean, there's a connection that they make with the audience. There's the hashtags that you mentioned. Does that mean going forward, I mean, is there anybody that can compete with Peloton at this point? I mean, you mentioned all of the other offerings that they have. They have bar, they have Pilates, they have outdoor running. I mean, can anyone compete with where Peloton is gone at this point?
Well, they're certainly trying to. And, you know, one of the interesting newer, but actually not so new entrants in all of this, but, you know, gaining a little bit of attention is Beachbody. You probably remember them from Insanity and P90X. They are going public via SPAC. They have an investment from Kevin Mayer, who ran a big chunk of Disney and then went on to run TikTok. Thomas Staggs, who also worked at Disney. Their SPAC is what's taking Beachbody public. And interestingly, Mix Fitness, I believe, Tim, you spoke with the president of Mix, Herbie Calvis, not too long ago. Mix is part of that new Beachbody. So they've got a lot of competition coming. And some of the competition is candidly going to be people going back to the boutique studios.
Well, so to that point, Jason, and I love the way that your piece starts out because it like really took me back on memory lane, thinking about workout videos, like straight up VHS videos. At-home fitness, it's nothing new.
Right.
This didn't start during the pandemic, but the road to Peloton is littered with the carcasses of companies that really had a hot moment, but aren't really doing well anymore. And you speak to some of these people. How do you prevent, or how does John Foley prevent Peloton from being a pandemic fad?
I think they have to continually innovate. They have to continually come up with the content. I mean, this is ultimately a content company in many ways. Yes, it's a technology company. Yes, it's a fitness company. But the content is what wins the day, going back to what we were talking about with the instructors. So it's got to be fresh. It's got to be engaging. It's got to be engaging in a way that you feel like not only you have a connection with the instructors, but this broader community around them. And that is going to be critical, sort of keeping that group together going forward.
It'll be so interesting to watch, and we will be watching it. Jason, we know you will be too. Quick Take Chief Correspondent Jason Kelly, thanks so much for your time and for your reporting, of course. And you can check out the next episode of Business of Sports tomorrow morning on Quick Take's YouTube page. Up next, the White House is doubling down on Obama-era emission standards. We'll be back in 2 minutes. This is Quick Take Charge.